For our next panel, I think we all realize right now, and a recurring theme throughout this day has been that the global challenge really meets global collaboration. What we need now is a truly global response to meet all of the challenges ahead of us. To help me talk about this, I'd like to welcome the next set of panelists to the stage, a group I'm really excited about. Shi Yang, Group President and Chief Technology Officer of Mingyang Smart Energy Group. Aaron Ubaa from Starsight Energy, Kidus, CEO and founder of Kubik, and Zoisa Northbond, CEO of Octopus Energy Generation. Come on up, guys. Here you are. Have a seat. Yeah, whichever way. No need to play musical chairs. They've got enough. So I think, for a lot of folks who are not familiar with folks on this stage, Xiang, maybe we can start with you. Can you give us a quick synopsis of what you're doing at Mingyang?
Yeah, so good afternoon, everyone. I'm from Mingyang Smart Energy. I'm the technical officer of the company and also the president of the global business. So 15% of my time was used to make the innovation of the offshore wind turbines and also onshore wind turbines. For example, the biggest 18 megawatts, I'm also the chief designer, and the biggest floating system, the Ocean X, the twin rotor of one rotor is also our design work. So I'm happy to share what we have and we have done to here.
Great. And Aaron, tell us a little bit as the Energy Systems Engineering Manager, if I have that right.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So basically, what we do over there in Nigeria is to try and create that gap regarding energy delivery. Most persons, at least on a global scale, understand that Nigeria has epileptic power supply. So for commercial institutions, that can be a go slow for their operations. So what we tend to do is we come into the picture with a solar system installation, give them something that is reliable and ensure that they don't have any interruption at the same time, and also make sure that it's cost beneficiary to them. We have installation cutting across over 600 commercial institutions that have come to benefit from it, ranging from commercial banks, educational institutions, and agro businesses. They have all come to benefit and realize the importance of diversifying your energy mix into solar and have it establish itself in your consumption.
Thank you so much, Aaron. And Kidus.
Thanks for having me. I founded a company called Kubik about 3 years ago. So we transform hard-to-recycle plastic waste into low-carbon and low-cost building materials. So you might be asking, why is this trash guy doing here? There's a lot I'll talk about on how that addresses some of the energy problems that we see in places like Ethiopia where we operate. But I'll also talk a little bit about the country of Ethiopia and it being a 100% renewable run country and one of the cheapest power sources that a business like Kubik can get in the world.
That's awesome. And Zoisa, a little bit about the work at Octopus.
Yes, good afternoon. Delighted to be here. I look after the generation arm at Octopus, but we are doing things a little bit differently in the sense of the fact that we are creating people-powered renewables. So putting people at the start of the project, not towards the back end or completely being forgotten about, which is what we find very often. So through our really innovative products where we've been using technology to connect customers to our wind farms so that when the wind blows, they can get as much as 50% off their energy bill. We have created this outpouring where communities are writing to us and saying, please come and build wind turbines like this in our back gardens, which means that we can flip the model on its head, and rather than pushing against society, we're actually being invited in, and there is very much a pull. So I'd be delighted to talk a little bit more about that this afternoon.
Oh, that's great. Well, I'm so excited to have everybody here. There is a wide breadth of experience on this panel and in this sector, but again, I feel like you're also facing very specific challenges in the work that you're doing. So, Kidus, let me start with you. If you could narrow it down, like, what is one of the biggest challenges that you're having right now in terms of like scaling what you're doing from Ethiopia?
It's unusual for a real estate developer to buy a product like ours because it is made out of plastic waste. One of the ways that we've been trying to break that perception that this is as good, as safe, but a lot more sustainable than cement is by really tackling the unit economics and making it something that's very viable for them to use. We also market it as a very boring product, meaning what you see is what you're already used to. It's just easier, cheaper, and a lot more efficient to use. So breaking that perception is probably the hardest work that we have. Thankfully, in Ethiopia, we've really penetrated that market and have outsized demand. But we know that there's a lot more of that type of barrier to overcome elsewhere.
Shiying, in terms of challenges, in terms of, is it getting people to adopt wind turbine technology, or are there other challenges?
Yeah, in fact, based the Chinese big markets, we make a lot of innovations. As I said before, like the offshore wind turbines and the latest innovative wind turbines, floating wind systems. But at the moment, we want to expand these innovations worldwide, for example, to Korea, Japan, and also perhaps also Europe. You will find that international, there's a standards difference, and some requires local contents and some regulations. And I think that today we are here. The same goal is carbon neutral. Mm-hmm. But you will find that there are some obstacles before you. You must some local content, some geopolitical reasons. So I hope that this can be solved. Then the real innovative technology can be benefit for the carbon neutral in the very near future.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I don't know, Aaron, if you want to.
No, sure. I would like to take it. So from a sub-Saharan Africa point of view, I think it's going to start with the most obvious one, which is trying to bring the policymakers on board in this case here. So basically, we already know the opportunity that it's in this industry, and if embraced by enacting policies that include duty exemption from renewable imports and tax breaks if you were to have a renewable system in your house or in your plant. So what that means is it will incentivize both public and non-public sectors, private sectors to actually buy into it. It's really going to help. I think if my memory serves me right, only one sub-Saharan African country that does net metering, the rest doesn't do that. So net metering too is a very critical issue that needs to be embraced as well, because what that happens is, for instance, a client that have low consumption but have a lot of roof space, it can't really embrace the idea of having renewable energy installed on his facility in order to feed back into the grid. So at the end of the day, everybody's looking at just installing what will be taken by the building, regardless of the potential that is in the industry.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are the obvious challenges.
And you're nodding your head like.
Yes, yeah, no, absolutely. I think just to build on the challenge with policymakers, I would also probably add the investment community to that, and not so much from the perspective of the projects that we might be creating in Europe, but also this people-powered model. For the first time, we've taken it to sub-Saharan Africa this year, to Sierra Leone. And it's speaking to an investment community which I think on a global scale is still doing the same old things, investing in the same old models, despite the fact that the population growth is going to come from those emerging economies, and that's where the power demand is going to be into the future.
Yeah.
And it's trying to force them to do things slightly differently. So with Sierra Leone, we really have a community there that wants to be 100% renewable from the outset. We have a model that we can take, but the level of risk that is assessed within that is really difficult.
Yeah.
And we kind of stood back and thought, well, where's this risk coming from? Oh, it's because we don't have the data. Well, of course, it's the first time Sierra Leone's seen a wind farm. Of course, we don't have the data. So do we stand back and do we say, let's take some time, let's get some consultants, let's spend a lot of money in doing that, or looking at the cost of it, do we just get on with it? Do we put a wind farm there, which is going to cost the same amount anyway?
Yeah.
We'll get some real data. We'll get some not theoretical risks around how you're going to mobilize the supply chain behind it, but actually get on and create it. So I think that mindset shift with, yes, policymakers, but also I think the investment community is just super important to really be encouraging into this next 5 years up to 2030.
You know, I think this is that is like pulling me on this thread of wondering, you know, some of these ideas may seem, like you said, innovative and maybe a bit of a tough sell because it requires thinking outside the status quo of what is actually possible. The investment community is one example, but how do you get people to buy into this idea, right? Like with wind turbine technology, there are aesthetic complaints. Same thing with solar panels. How are you getting what we call in the U.S. hearts and minds of people? I don't know, Aaron, why don't we start with you?
Sure. So in the case of Nigeria, I think I made mention of the entirety of the country having epileptic power supply and very archaic grid network. So transmission and distribution is still a challenge. However, with renewables, the capacity of having a standalone system have actually incentivized people who understand the benefit that I can get power at a significant amount of time at a cheaper rate and cut away this rigid grid system. We had a conversation where an excellent presenter talked about grid upgrade and the challenges that comes with it. That structural requirement, it's always very, very hectic. But in the case of distributed energy resources that the country have come to embrace, most especially in the private sector and even some government institutions, it's very seamless. It's cut away that bottleneck of trying to bring that massive capital requirement of national grid upgrade in terms of transmission and distribution.
And I think Kidus is, you know, you seem to be saying that, you know, your company, the technology is really taking off and demand is actually increasing over supply. That's a great problem to have.
Yeah, look, if you go to our website, we talk about the soul of the company, right? We talk about how we're environmentally sustainable, how we're empowering over 1,000 women, how we're trying to drive affordability in housing. But if I'm talking to a client, none of that matters. The numbers need to work. And that's something that has been kind of the secret sauce to everything that we've done, including you know, when we've been fundraising with investors, is the numbers need to work. And I think the best example for me outside of our company is the country of Ethiopia again, right? About 15 years ago, then the head of state decided to put a big risk in creating a 6.5 gigawatt hydroelectric dam, which was coming with a lot of resistance. This dam is now done, and Ethiopia is a net exporter of electricity, and it's attracting a lot of investment, especially within the cloud computing industry. So I think as much as a lot of the feel-good stuff matters, it is important that the numbers are backed down with it as well.
And let me ask you a quick question, though. With the challenges that you're all facing, like we already know that, but is there an innovation, like something in the industry, something that you're doing that makes you feel optimistic? Xiang?
Yeah. So about innovation, so we talk about carbon neutral and also innovation. In fact, I personally involved in 3 different projects of a floating system. The first is the 5.5 megawatts with a steel foundation floating. The second is 7.25 megawatts steel. And the third is 16.6 megawatts with the concrete. So according to my experience, the cost of floating wind systems goes down sharply. What does sharply means is minus 13% now. And yes, so I think the latest, from the cost point of view, it will be economic in Japan, in Korea, and perhaps also in China. So I think such kind of floating system can be also economic in some area in Europe. So what is optimistic compared to the fossil energy? Renewable energy is more to do with the technology improvements. It's something like manufacturing. No? When you have a technology, then the cost goes sharply down. So I'm optimistic about at least the wind. Now, solar in China, of course, you know that. So yes, so with more and more practice, more and more innovation, I'm optimistic about the future. No?
Zoisa, let me ask you the same question. What are you most optimistic about in terms of innovation right now?
Innovation. I would say the combination of people and technology, which can create the most amazing people-focused and centric ideas, and particularly in developing renewable energy projects. I alluded at the start to our fan club tariff, but it's what almost that's created, which is absolutely extraordinary. So we've had 35,000 communities get in touch with us for wind turbines or renewable generation. And they are fundamentally saying, come and build your projects here, which actually is in the right places because it's going to be close to the source of consumption. Yeah. So all those amazing electrons going through the system are not being wasted, as we've heard today. They're actually going to be used in local areas, and they get cheap energy as a result. But it's the ability then to map all of that desire and want from customers into a system, and then do all of the other things like, can we connect grid projects? There's lots of data out there, we can do that. Combining wind speeds and all of the traditional things that you would see in development, and bringing that together to actually create a model that's going to be less full of friction, and as I said, working with society. I mean, most importantly, in the UK, for instance, we brought it together in a platform that we actually called Winder. So it's Tinder for wind, because we're matchmaking communities with wind turbines. But it was this kind of approach where there had been nearly a decade-year-long ban on building wind turbines. And actually, in speaking to both governments, so the one previously and the one now, this kind of approach where you could show that it was people wanted it, yeah. And tech and just the pure desire of people combined could create an effect like lifting a wind ban after 10 years, I think is absolutely extraordinary. So that always makes me feel very optimistic.
Well, there seems to be like it seems like the passion is there, the technology is there. One of the biggest challenges for global collaboration, though, are policies and government changes. With the few minutes that we have left, what do you think is the most important piece, policy or legislation, that you think needs to happen to help advance a clean agenda? We'll go down the line.
Yeah, from my point of view, that's some geopolitical policy maker and the acceptance of innovation.
Aaron?
Yeah, also I can think of a couple of policies that can actually drive that forward. I think by and large, as a race, we shouldn't pretend that we don't have a problem regarding an energy scale-up and also diversification to renewable energy. So I think it's about insisting, find a way, maybe there is a better word for that, it's about insisting for every single commercial institution to have some form of renewable energy generation on the facility, and I think that will head us in the right direction, I think.
That's great.
Yeah.
Kidus?
I think innovation should get an unfair advantage, right, in regulation or policy, because at the end of the day, one of the biggest barriers is just traction, right? and that needs to be cleared up. But I do want to talk about something that does make me very optimistic,
Please.
and that's young people. I mean, there was a client that we recently had who's a cement manufacturer. They're competition, and yet he took on our product. And I actually asked him, why did you do it? And he said, because my kid will kill me if I did it. And it was a really interesting kind of revelation of how young people do feel a skin in the game to make change towards progress. And we should really listen to them. And even when it comes to policy and regulation, you'll be very surprised how much sway they can have in the future.
Absolutely. I would say to policymakers that there has been an amazing focus on scaling and bringing more. But given the fact that we are seeing so much is being wasted, we also need to think about the amazing things that technology can do, as well as infrastructure, to bring those cheaper electrons to end customers. So it would be more focus on the system-wide effect and all of the amazing advances that we're seeing can actually have on making that a reality.
Well, that's great. Unfortunately, I think that's all the time that we have for today. But I want to just thank you all very much for coming here and doing this. And it just seems like really revitalizing to know that there's so many great ideas out there and that we're reaching to make it all happen. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.